I was sitting in the break room, staring at the stack of untouched paperwork. It was late, and the usual hum of the emergency room felt distant. I could hear the night staff sharing strange stories, their laughter echoing against the cold, sterile walls. But the way they spoke sent a chill down my spine. I had worked here for over a decade, and I never paid attention to the rumors. Still, that night felt different. One of my coworkers mentioned a patient who spoke in a language that no one understood. I chuckled, thinking it was just another tall tale. But as I walked back to the ER, I felt an unsettling shift in the air. The fluorescent lights flickered above me, which was odd for this place where everything seemed so controlled. I told myself it was just my tired mind playing tricks. By the time my next shift rolled around, things took a turn for the bizarre. I walked into a room and found a patient staring blankly at the wall. She was murmuring something under her breath. I couldn't understand the words. It felt like she was chanting? My heart raced as I checked her chart. Nothing unusual was supposed to be happening. A knot twisted in my stomach. As days passed, odd things kept happening. A heart monitor would beep erratically, even when the patient was steady. I rolled my eyes, adjusting the settings, thinking I needed sleep. The hallways felt emptier, shadows lingering at the corners. I started to wonder if it was just me. Then I heard my coworkers talk about seeing a nurse in old scrubs wandering the halls. They described her sickly smile and how she smelled of antiseptic and decay. I laughed it off, but my belief wobbled. One of my colleagues claimed she saw the same nurse just a few nights ago. More stories piled up. Even the seasoned staff looked uneasy. On my last shift, someone said they found a message carved into a cafeteria table. "Help me," it said, but the letters looked strange. I felt a cold current run through me. I still thought it was a prank, but that doubt grew. What if something bad lingered in this hospital? The whispers seemed to surround me now, making it hard to focus. I stepped around a corner and came face to face with that same patient, the one who had been murmuring. She was standing up now, eyes wide and dark. "Help me," she said again, but with a different tone. My heart was pounding. I asked her what she needed, but she only pointed down the dark hallway. She was signaling toward the area where they kept the not-so-stable patients. Something felt wrong. I thought about turning away, but before I could move, she vanished. I froze, a wave of confusion washing over me. Then I noticed the corridor was empty. I felt like I was being watched. Maybe the stories were more than just idle chatter. Maybe they were warnings. I didn't know what to think. But I couldn't shake that feeling. Something was not right in this hospital. The next shift started as usual, but the air felt heavier. I kept replaying the image of the patient in my mind. Her dark eyes and urgent voice haunted me. I wondered if I should have asked more questions. Maybe I should have followed her. As I walked to check on my assigned patients, I noticed a few of my coworkers gathered by the nurse's station. They seemed tense, whispering and glancing nervously toward the far end of the hallway. Naturally, my curiosity pulled me in. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Did you hear? The patient in room 213 is acting strange," one nurse said, her voice barely above a whisper. I frowned. "Strange how?" "She won't stop crying. But when we check on her, she just stares at the wall." "No one knows why," the other nurse added, her eyes darting. I felt a chill run down my spine. Room 213. It was just one door down from where I had seen the chanting patient. I offered to go take a look. I made my way down the hallway, my heart thumping. With each step, the fluorescent lights flickered again. I shook my head, dismissing it as fatigue. As I pushed open the door to room 213, a wave of dread washed over me. The patient, an older woman, looked up as I entered. Her eyes were wide with fear. "Help me," she whispered, her voice cracking. "What's wrong?" I asked, inching closer. "Something is in here with us," she said, her voice trembling. I scanned the room, seeing nothing unusual. "I hear it whispering," she continued, glancing at the wall as if it were alive. "Whispering? What is it saying?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. She shook her head. "I can't understand it. It's wrong. A sudden noise made me jump. It came from the corner of the room. I turned, expecting to see a staff member, but there was no one. The air grew thick, and a strange taste filled my mouth. Please, you need to leave. The woman urged, her voice rising in panic. I hesitated, feeling rooted to the spot. That's when I saw a flash of shadow darting just past my peripheral vision. I stepped back, confusion gripping me. What do you mean, leave? Just go. It's not safe. She yelled, her fear palpable. I turned to run, but just then the lights went out. Darkness enveloped the room. I stumbled, reaching for the wall to steady myself. The sound of soft whispers filled the air, unintelligible yet eerily familiar. My heart raced as I fumbled for the door. I couldn't stay here. I had to escape. I finally found the handle and pushed the door open, plunging back into the hallway. The chaos of the hospital felt distant, almost muted. I turned to look back into the room, panic clawing at me. The patient had vanished from sight. I could barely breathe. What was happening? I was about to lose my mind. That's when I saw a figure stood at the opposite end of the corridor, cloaked in darkness, watching me. The whispers intensified. I felt trapped, pulled in different directions between the stories and the strange encounters. I needed answers, and I was running out of time. I stumbled back into the hallway, my instincts screaming for me to get away. The figure at the end of the corridor didn't move, just stayed there, a silhouette swallowed by the shadows. I decided I had to make my way back to the nurse's station. Maybe my coworkers could help. I picked up my pace, glancing over my shoulder. The whispers were louder now, echoing through the corridor. I turned my head, searching for their source, but saw only the emptiness of the hospital wing. My breath felt heavy in my chest. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When I arrived at the nurse's station, I saw my coworkers huddled together, their faces pale. They looked up when I approached, concern etched on their features. You okay? One asked. I nodded, though my mind was racing. Did you see the woman in room 213? She was terrified, and then it was all dark. She disappeared. What? You didn't go in there, did you? You should just called for someone, another nurse said, her voice rising with anxiety. I had to check on her, I insisted. But I think something in that room it's wrong. I can feel it. Just then, the overhead lights flickered again. The tension in the air felt heavy, almost suffocating. Some of us have been hearing strange things lately, one of the nurses said carefully. Patients have been acting up, more than usual. It's like they're seeing things. Things? I asked, suddenly uneasy. Just strange things, she replied, her gaze drifting toward the far end of the hallway. You heard the whispers, didn't you? I felt my throat tighten. What do you mean? You've heard them too? The nurses exchanged worried glances. There was that patient last week, in room 224, one of them began. She told us she saw a man in the shadows, muttering to her. A few nights later, she was found unresponsive. I felt a chill wash over me. The whispers in room 213, the figure watching me, could it be connected? What if it's true? I whispered, my voice shaky. A sudden commotion from the end of the hall made us all jump. A doctor rushed past us, his expression fraught. We need to check room 309. Now. Why? I called after him. Patient S been talking about dark figures. Says they're trying to take her, he yelled back as he disappeared around the corner. My heart raced. I couldn't just stand here. I needed to know more. Following the doctor, I found myself in an elevator, the doors sliding shut as I pressed the button for the third floor. It felt like time slowed. The whispers had quieted, but I could still sense something lingering in the air. As the elevator doors opened, I stepped into a different world. The atmosphere was thick with tension. I scanned the hallway, hoping whatever I felt in room 213 wouldn't follow me here. But then, as I turned to enter 309, I heard it again, the faintest whisper, weaving through the air like a lost echo. Someone else here, I breathed, looking around. I stepped forward, afraid yet determined to find out what was happening. That's when I saw a figure standing just inside the doorway of room 309, the exact shape I had seen before. And this time, it was looking right at me. I felt my heart pound in my chest as I stood frozen, staring at the figure. The shroud of shadows seemed to cling to it like a second skin. I squinted, trying to figure out what was happening. Was it a trick of the light? An illusion? The figure didn't move. It just lingered there, dark and silent. I took a hesitant step back, instinct urging me to run. But curiosity, a desperate need for answers, pulled me forward. "Hello?" I called out, my voice shaking. It felt stupid to speak to a shadow, but I had to break the silence. What if it was someone in distress? The whispers from before echoed in my mind. Were they trying to warn me? No response. I issued another cautious step toward the doorway of room 309. The air was thick, pressing against me as if the walls themselves were alive. The figure remained still, and I could see outlines of what looked like a face, faint and twisted. Just as I was about to turn away, something shifted. A flicker of movement seemed to dance through its form, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I needed to know what was going on. I took another step forward, leaning into the doorway. "Is anyone in there?" I asked, louder this time. Finally, the figure seemed to dissolve, melting into the shadows, and I stepped inside the room, heart hammering. The space was dim, illuminated only by a small light in the corner. The curtains were drawn tight, casting everything into half-light. I quickly scanned the room. There were a few machines beeping softly, but the patient lay in bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, visibly shaken. "Are you okay?" I rushed over to her side. She turned to me, her eyes filled with fear. "They're here. I can't escape." Her voice trembled as she whispered those words. "The figures, they came for me." That made my blood run cold. "What figures?" I asked, needing to understand. "The ones in the shadows," she replied, her gaze darting around the room. "They want me to join them. They want to take me." My breath caught. This was more than I could handle. Had I stumbled into something much darker than I initially thought? I turned to look for the figure, but there was nothing and no one there. Before I could think, the lights overhead flickered violently, plunging us into darkness. A low growl echoed through the room, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. Something was very wrong. I reached for the light switch, my fingers trembling, but before I could find it, I heard whispers again, closer this time. They weren't just in my head, they swirled around me, pressing in as if the darkness itself had a voice. "Join us," they whispered, chilling me to the bone. "Stay back," I shouted, panic surging. "I'm not afraid of you." Suddenly, the lights blared back to life, and I was met with the sight of the figure standing at the foot of the bed, its form clearer now, skin white as paper, eyes hollow and deep. "Leave," it said, its voice a cacophony. As I stumbled backward, I realized this was no ordinary night shift. I needed to get out. Despair washed over me, but as I turned to flee, I felt something grip my arm. And that was when I truly realized I was not alone. I jerked free from the grip, heart racing. The room felt constricting, the walls seemed to breathe around me as I gathered my composure. I looked at the woman in the bed. She was still watching me, terror etched across her features. "Get away from that thing," she whispered, voice trembling. "It feeds on fear." What did she mean by that? I had enough fear to fill a stadium right now, but I couldn't just stand there. I needed to act. I needed to help her and myself. I glanced back at the door. It felt like my only escape, but the figure loomed just beyond the path, the flickering light of the machines casting strange shadows that twisted around it. "We need to leave," I urged her. She shook her head slowly. "It can't be killed. Please, you have to go. I'm already lost." A tear escaped her eye. In that moment, something shifted in her expression. There was resignation, as if she had already given in to the shadows swirling around her. But I couldn't accept that. "No, you're not lost. We'll figure this out together." I reached for her hand, desperate to pull her back from the edge. That's when something cold wrapped around my ankle, dragging me down. I felt panic clawing at my heart as the whispers came louder, filling the room. "Join us," they hissed. I struggled, but the grip tightened. "Help me!" I screamed, but my voice was swallowed by the darkness. I could see the figure move closer, its hollow eyes locked onto mine. It was hungry. "Let her go!" I shouted, forcing every ounce of will into my voice. I didn't know what I was doing, but I had to try. Just as I felt myself succumb to the pull of the darkness, the lights flickered again. In that split second, I saw the room shifted. It wasn't just a hospital room anymore. The walls bled into the shadows, revealing flashes of other moments and patients who had once been there, faces twisted in torment, pleading for help. I caught a glimpse of a man wrapped in darkness, a nurse with hollow eyes, and a small child crying. They were trapped, just like the patient before me. Their despair was real, their stories haunting. "Stop!" I yelled, summoning every ounce of courage I had left. "You won't take anyone else." The room shuddered with rage, and the dark figure hesitated. Just long enough for me to wrench myself free from the grip at my ankle. I stumbled backward and grabbed the woman's hand, pulling her with me. We dashed towards the doorway, my heart pounding like thunder, but as we reached the threshold, the lights went out again. The darkness swallowed us, hot and suffocating. I could hear the low growl come from every direction, echoing like a chorus of souls. Then everything was silent. When the lights flickered back on, we were no longer in room 309. We stood instead in a long, darkened hallway. The walls were debris-strewn, and I realized this place wasn't a hospital anymore. What just happened? I breathed, trying to comprehend it all. The woman next to me looked around, horror dawning on her face. They've taken us. We're in their world now. And that was when I heard the whispers again, ready to welcome us home. The hallway stretched endlessly, flickering lights above us casting eerie shadows. I could feel the air thick with dread. My heart raced, reminding me of the split moment back in the hospital. I glanced at the woman beside me. She had gone pale, her eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. "What do we do now?" I asked, my voice shaky. Fear was creeping back in, sinking its claws into my chest. "We have to keep moving," she said firmly, trying to steady herself. "They'll be coming." I didn't want to think about who or what they were. I took a deep breath and nodded, taking her hand again. We walked cautiously down the hall, the sound of our footsteps echoing around us like drums of doom. The whispers grew louder with each step, buzzing in my ears, taunting me. Suddenly, the hallway opened into a large room. What once was a waiting area now felt like a mausoleum, the walls covered in dark, creeping vines that pulsed almost rhythmically. Old medical instruments lay scattered across the floor, needles, bandages, and broken chairs, and an oppressive, stale stench hung in the air. "Look," she said, pointing to a flickering screen in the corner. "It's a monitor. Maybe we can find out where we are." I glanced at the screen as it flickered to life. Static filled the space, but then, a distorted image broke through, a room, one I recognized. It was the same room where I'd encountered the figure, the one that fed on fear. I felt my stomach lurched. I stepped closer, forgetting for a moment to be cautious. The monitor flickered again, showing shadowy outlines darting around. The figures looked like patients, lost in this nightmare. My breath caught when I saw a familiar face, a man from my past, someone I never thought I'd see again. "What's wrong?" The woman's voice pulled me back. I frantically shook my head, trying to dismiss it. "Just let us keep moving," I urged, turning away from the screen, but the whispers intensified, becoming a chanting chorus as we stepped further into the room. It felt like the shadows were closing in, crawling along the walls toward us. "They're hungry," I murmured, the realization dawning on me. Suddenly, a voice broke through the whispers, strong and commanding. "Stay away from the light." The words echoed, sending a chill racing down my spine. "What was that?" I muttered, eyes wide. The woman's gaze drifted again, analyzing the dark corners of the room. "I don't know, it sounds like there's someone else here." Panic flickered in my chest again. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I couldn't form the words. That's when I noticed a figure emerging from the shadows, its outline indistinct but definitely present. "Run!" I yelled, grabbing her wrist and sprinting towards the doorway we had entered. The whispers turned into anguished wails, echoing in a symphony of chaos behind us. As we escaped the room, I dared to glance back over my shoulder. The figure stood illuminated by a flicker of light, its eyes blazing with an insatiable hunger. "You can't hide!" it called, voice dripping with malice. I shoved through the doorway and into the next hallway, my breath coming in ragged gasps. "What do we do?" I asked, panic surging in me. "We have to find a way out. There must be a way to escape this place." She was focused, determined, but I could see the fear in her eyes too. "Or a way to fight back," I added, though I had no idea how. Then, I spotted another doorway at the end of the hall. It was slightly ajar, a sliver of light spilling from within. "Over there!" I pointed, running towards it. I could feel the darkness chasing us, the whispers becoming furious shouts. As we approached the door, I could hear something different emanating from the room. Hope, perhaps? Or was I only deceiving myself? Just on the other side of that door lay whichever fate awaited us. And I hoped we wouldn't be too late to change it. As I reached the partially open door, the light spilling out felt like a beacon. I hesitated for only a heartbeat before pushing it the rest of the way open. The room beyond was bright, almost blinding in contrast to the darkness we just fled inside. I scanned the room quickly. It resembled a break room, a table, bright overhead lights, and a vending machine in the corner. But instead of comfort, a sense of wrongness crawled along my skin. There were no chairs, no signs of life, just emptiness. "What kind of break room is this?" I whispered, half expecting something to jump out at me. "Something's not right," the woman murmured, stepping cautiously inside. I moved further in, eyes darting around. And that's when I noticed the walls. They weren't painted, but covered in photographs, dozens and dozens of faces looking directly at us, their expressions frozen in moments of despair, fear, and loss. Each face seemed more haunting than the last. "Who are they?" I didn't realize I had spoken until I heard my own voice echo back, swallowed by the dead air. "I don't know. But we need to find a way out," she replied, her voice trembling. I could see the way she strained to remain calm, but I could feel the fear radiating from her. "Maybe there's a door?" I suggested, scanning the room again, but I saw only that vending machine. My gaze lingered there for a moment too long. "Wait," I said as I approached it. "What if there was something useful inside? Could there be something we can use?" The woman stayed back, her expression a mix of hope and dread. I pressed the button for a candy bar. The machine rattled but remained stubbornly still. I pushed the button repeatedly, my frustration building. Suddenly, a loud clang echoed behind us. I whipped around, and my heart dropped. The door we had just come through slammed shut, trapping us inside. "What was that?" she gasped as she sprinted toward the door, pounding against it. "Stay back!" I shouted, not wanting her to get too close. I tried to pry the door open, but it wouldn't budge. And then, the photographs on the wall began to shift. The faces twisted in and out of focus, their expressions changing from fear to agony. I was rooted in place as I watched one face transform into that of the man I had seen on the monitor, a plea in his eyes. "Do you see that?" I asked, barely able to form the words. The woman stepped back, trembling with disbelief. "What is happening?" she cried, her voice rising in panic. The machine rattled again, and dark shadows crept along the walls, converging on us. I recognized that voice again, clearer this time. "You can't escape," it echoed, filling the room. "Run!" I screamed, heart pounding. Panic propelled me, and I dashed toward the vending machine, shoving it aside with all my strength. It crashed against the wall, and the floor shook. Just beneath it, I saw a trapdoor narrow, but it had to lead somewhere. I pulled on the handle, feeling the wood give way. Behind me, the shadows were closing in, and I could hear the whispers growing into deafening shouts. "You're mine!" With a swift motion, I threw the door open. Come on, I yelled, grabbing the woman's hand. We have to jump, I said, my voice barely steady. The darkness rippled close behind us. Without looking back, we leaped into the unknown. As we fell, the screams faded, but the shadows lingered at the edges of my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only plunging deeper into whatever nightmare awaited us below. We landed with a thud on a cold, hard surface. Instinctively, I rolled to my side, pulling the woman with me. She gasped, scrambling to her feet. "Where are we?" she whispered, looking around. The dim light from above barely illuminated our surroundings. We stood in what appeared to be a long hallway. The walls were bare, the floor rough beneath my shoes. An odd odor filled the air, sharp and antiseptic, heavy with the weight of secrets. "Let us go," I urged, keeping my voice low as we pressed forward. The silence felt more oppressive than I expected. Each step echoed, amplifying the tension. As we walked, I noticed doors lining the hallway, some ajar, others tightly shut. I paused by one door, curiosity peaking. What lay behind it? I reached out, but the woman pulled me back. "Don't," she warned, her eyes wide with fear. "We don't know what's in there." I took a breath, forcing myself to focus. She was right. The last thing we needed was to investigate every room in this forsaken place. We continued down the hall, stepping cautiously, when a soft whimper reached my ears. My heart raced. It was faint, but it was there, coming from a door to our right. "Did you hear that?" I asked. The woman nodded, but hesitation showed on her face. "It could be a trap. Maybe someone needs help," I countered. I approached the door slowly, pressing my ear against it. The whimpering was clearer now, a pitiful sound that made my stomach twist. It was a chance. Someone might know what was happening. I turned the knob gently, my heart pounding in anticipation. As I pushed the door open, what I saw inside made me recoil. The room was dark and cramped, filled with old medical equipment that seemed to have been abandoned in a rush. But it was the sight of the figure huddled in the corner that struck me. A woman, her hair disheveled, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she cried out, looking up at us with wild eyes. "You have to help me." My mind raced. What happened? How did you get here? I asked, stepping inside. "They're coming. They'll take you too." She trembled uncontrollably, her voice rising in pitch as she clawed to her feet. "You have to leave. You can't stay here." Before we could respond, a deep, resonant boom echoed through the corridor. The walls shuddered, and the woman's face drained of color. "No! It's too late!" she screamed, backing away, eyes darting nervously around the room. I felt the rush of dread wash over me. "What do you mean? What's coming?" But then I saw it, a shadow forming at the end of the hallway, dark and swirling, moving towards us with unnatural speed. I turned back to the woman, but she was already retreating, her panicked breaths quickening. "Get out!" she shrieked, desperate. "Run!" The darkness quaked, spilling into the room. I grabbed the woman's arm. "We have to go." Just as we bolted out of the room, one of the doors down the hall sprang open. A pair of figures stepped into the light, their faces twisted with fear. "Run!" they shouted as the shadows surged closer, engulfing the corridor in an inky blackness. My mind screamed at me to move. We sprinted, adrenaline surging, as the shadows clawed at our heels. As we raced past the figures, their eyes met mine, a moment of shared terror. Then everything went dark. I staggered, disoriented in the void. My pulse hammered in my ears, drowning out everything else. I clutched the woman's hand tightly, feeling the warmth of her skin against the chilling panic enveloping us. "Can you see anything?" I asked, my voice trembling. There was no response. I could only feel her grip tighten, pulling me forward as if she could sense where to go. It felt wrong. How could we navigate in such oppressive darkness? Just as I began to lose hope, I spotted a flicker of light far ahead. "Over there!" I shouted, pointing toward the flickering hope. We stumbled toward it, the shadows still swirling around us. The darkness felt alive, wrapping around my ankles as we moved. I could almost hear whispers, threatening and mocking. My heart raced, not just from fear but from the uncertain urgency driving us to that glimpse of illumination. As we reached the light, I realized we stood at the threshold of another room. I pushed the door open cautiously. The light spilled out, illuminating dusty old medical charts, flickering bulbs dangling from the ceiling. "Are you okay?" I turned to the woman beside me. Relief rushed over me when I saw her face, pale but intact. I think so," she stammered, still shaky. "But we can't stay here." Before I could respond, the door slammed shut behind us. I turned quickly, tugging the handle, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged again. The woman's breath quickened beside me. "Look!" she gasped, pointing to a figure standing in the corner. My eyes darted over to see a man dressed in a stained white coat, his back turned to us. He was mumbling softly to himself, clutching a clipboard as if it contained the answers to everything. "Excuse me," I called out, hesitant but desperate. "Can you help us?" He turned slowly, and I froze. His eyes were hollow, devoid of emotion. "This is not where you belong," he said, his voice flat and unsettling. "What do you mean?" I pressed, glancing at the woman as dread clawed at my throat. "They're searching for you." "They won't let you escape," he replied, his head tilting slightly, studying us as if we were specimens rather than people. "Who?" the woman asked, her voice barely a whisper, fear creeping back in waves. The man paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "They'll come for you soon. You must find the exit beyond the light." "That doesn't make any sense," I shouted, frustration boiling over. "How do we do that?" Suddenly, the lights flickered furiously, illuminating rows of old medical tools and forgotten histories. My eyes darted to the walls, all covered in notes and warnings written in frantic handwriting. "Find the key," the man said simply, then turned back to face the wall, returning to his muttering. "Let us go," I urged the woman, the urgency of our situation crashing over me like a wave. "We have to find a way out." But as we turned to leave, the door rattled violently, and I could hear the faint whispers returning, growing louder each second. I felt a growing dread, a sense of something coming. "Wait!" the woman yelled. "What if we're walking into a trap?" That's when I saw it. The shadows were moving again, gathering at the edges of the room, seeping in like a dark tide. We had to decide, stay with the man or run into the chaos of the unknown outside. I hesitated. Whatever choice we made would potentially change everything. The shadows surged forward, their whispers morphing into frantic screams. I grabbed the woman's arm, dragging her toward the exit, and we burst through the door just as the darkness lashed out behind us. The hallway loomed ahead, gloomy, familiar, whispered in dread, but we had no choice. We sprinted ahead, the echoes of our footsteps swallowed by the chaos around us. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a reminder of the urgency pressing down on us. "Which way?" I yelled, panic rising. The corridors stretched endlessly, doors looming ominously on either side, but there was no time to think. We picked a path, moving ever deeper into the oppressive darkness. Occasionally, eerie flickers of light would illuminate the shadows, revealing glimpses of something. Forms twisted and writhed, faces contorted in agony, watching us from the edges like spectators at a macabre theater. The fear wrapped around my throat like a vice. "We need to find a door that leads out," I shouted, but it felt futile. The closer we ran, the further escape seemed. "Look!" the woman gasped, pointing down a corridor where a light flickered. It was weak but warm, a contrast against the icy fear thickening the air. Desperate, I took her hand and pulled her in that direction. The whispers grew louder as we approached the light, swarming us with frantic voices that deepened my dread. "Don't stop!" I urged her. The corridor twisted unnaturally, bending in ways that felt wrong, the light wavering. Colors blurred as we reached the end, where we encountered a door, a simple, unmarked door that stood in stark contrast to the horror surrounding us. I flung it open, heart racing with hope. It opened into a small room, alive with a harsh brightness. A single fluorescent bulb hissed overhead. The walls were lined with mirrors, each reflecting a distorted version of ourselves. The woman looked pale, shaken, but still resolute. "What now?" she asked, the question weighing heavily in the air. For a moment, I was caught in the gaze of the mirrors. Each reflection seemed to offer glimpses of others in torment, figures reaching out, their mouths moving in silent cries. I felt what they felt, a longing for escape, for someone to hear their plight. But then the whispers returned, swirling violently through the air, elevating into a scream that resonated deep within my bones. "They're coming!" the woman yelled, looking back toward the door. "We have to go." I turned away from the glass and sprinted to the far wall, searching for a way out. Maybe there was a hidden exit, a way to break free from this nightmare. Behind me, I heard the door slam shut, keeping whatever lurked beyond trapped on the other side. I fumbled against the wall, fingertips brushing against bricks that felt damp with fear. Then my hand landed on a latch, almost hidden and cold against the warmth. "Here!" I shouted, yanking the latch. The wall creaked open, revealing a dark tunnel behind it. Hope ignited in my chest. "We can go this way." But as we slipped through the opening, the shifting shadows drew closer, their whispers transforming into an anguished wail that ricocheted around the walls. I felt the weight of despair pressing on my chest, clinging like a second skin. The darkness coiled around us, threatening to pull us back into its depths. We navigated the cramped tunnel, footfalls echoing in darkness, each flicker of light ahead urging us to move faster. With every step, I could feel the whispers at our heels, the chilling promise that they would catch us if we faltered. Finally, the tunnel opened up into another dimly lit room, and I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "This place isn't real," I muttered, the wrongness clung like fog. We were deep within whatever twisted nightmare this was, and I was starting to doubt our chance of escape. Ahead, a door stood ajar, invitingly lit from beyond. I pushed it open, but as the door swung wide, a figure stepped into the light, blocking our way. The doctor, from before, his eyes hollow, expression warped, gazed at us. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, voice eerily calm. "Let us pass," I demanded, trying to muster strength against the growing dread. "The darkness wants you," he said, his voice a monotone echo. "It will bring you back." Before I could reply, the whispers swelled to a deafening roar, shadows closing in like a wave, threatening to snatch us back once more. I could feel the cold tendrils wrapping around my legs, anchoring me down as if the darkness itself was sentient. "No!" I screamed, summoning all my energy, fighting against the suffocating weight. "We're not going back." The woman beside me threaded her fingers through mine, squeezing tightly, igniting a spark of hope even amid the chaos. "We can't give in," she shouted, her voice a rallying cry rising above the din. "Through the door," I yelled, pulling her with me. With one final push fueled by desperation, we surged forward, throwing ourselves into the room beyond. As we crossed the threshold, everything went black. I awoke in the break room of the hospital, the faint sound of hushed voices swirling around me. I bolted upright, disoriented, heart racing as reality crashed back in. The clock on the wall read 3 a.m., and everything seemed so unreal. Confused murmurs echoed from the hallway, coalescing with the memories of shadowy figures and desperate whispers. I still felt the cold grip of horror lingering, like a hushed promise unwilling to let go. I looked around as my co-workers bustled in, the humane warmth of the break room contrasting sharply against what I had just witnessed. "Are you all right?" someone asked, concern clouding their face. I think so," I mumbled, trying to gather my senses. But the memories flooded back, vivid and unresolved. I couldn't shake the feeling that something remained behind, waiting, lurking, perhaps even hungry for more. In the back of my mind, I was acutely aware that I might never know the truth. Was it all a hallucination, a convergence of fear? Or was there something deeper at play, something lurking just beneath the veil of our reality? I stood, my legs shaky, thoughts racing toward the hidden depths of the hospital, now seemingly darker than ever. I caught a glimpse of darkness lingering at the end of the hallway. My heart sank. I had escaped for now, but the shadows were still waiting, intertwining themselves with the very fabric of this place. I moved through the hospital, mind swirling with unanswered questions, knowing I would never truly feel safe again.